So we are really excited to have Cate with us. Cate is a vice president at Lake Research Partners, where she conducts quantitative and qualitative analysis and she is here to give us some information on what we should be looking forward to in the election and how our issues are being received and potentially how we can make sure that when we're putting out what we want, that we're doing it in the way that will be most effective in our election work. So thank you so much, Cate, for being here. I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bettina. Thank you, Carol, for having me. Just want to echo how incredible that was to be able to sit here and be taught by Dr. Goodwin. And does anyone envy me for having to speak after her? Let's see how I do here. So as Bettina mentioned, I'm a pollster and my firm does public opinion research with different audiences. I don't unfortunately have fresh findings on attitudes toward the ERA, but we've seen in polls that have been released year after year that there is widespread support for passing the ERA, for making this reality for people. And I wanted to talk instead about the things that are important to different cohorts of women in 2022 as we look ahead to the election. And I have 4 studies that I can go through very quickly that are going to show us what folks are thinking. I want to acknowledge that with the horrific school shooting that happened earlier this week, and with the leaked Supreme Court case decision, that we're in a really volatile moment. So that means that these major events are happening and they are impacting attitudes and shifting priorities for different cohorts of voters. So the findings that I have predate these things for the most part. I can say anecdotally, we've done many focus groups this week since the school shooting in Texas, and I have seen how the issue of gun control has really risen in salience, and that would not have happened the day before. And then with the leaked Supreme Court decision, that is totally shifting the landscape on attitudes toward abortion, attitudes toward what we should be doing about abortion as a country. And we saw in the past, when we asked people, how concerned are you about the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade? How likely do you think that this is to happen? That they were skeptical about it. And with the leaked decision, we've had a whole wave of people whose eyes have been open to what activists and advocates have been saying for years, that this was the end game. And now they're more likely to see that this is a real possibility. So when this becomes reality, when the final decision is ultimately released, and I think we're all anticipating that to happen in June, this is going to be yet another moment of a lot of volatility and a lot of shifts, as this precedent that has been in place for 49 years is no longer there. And we'll be able to see, as states are clamoring to continue to restrict access to abortion, calling special sessions specifically to do this, that as this becomes real for more and more people, that attitude is going to continue to shift and evolve. All right. So now that I've said that, let me share a couple of studies here. This first one is, I hope everyone can see this okay. It's a graph of the most important issue that is going to determine your vote. This was funded by All In Together. They're a bipartisan group that focuses on women's political engagement. They worked with us and Emerson College Polling on this. And this was conducted earlier in the year, again, before the leak of the Supreme Court case. This shows you across, it's women across race. And I know that the font is pretty small here, so I will read for y'all, but the first grouping of columns is rising prices. And you can see across race that rising prices really dominates as the issue that was going to determine the vote in this year's elections. Numbers of polls have reinforced this. Rising prices are a major issue. Next, we have healthcare and prescription drugs. And I want to point out that Black women, which is the yellow column here, this is more salient for Black women than women of other races. Next, we have abortion. Now, if this poll was conducted today, I promise that abortion would be higher. We've seen that in other polls that have been released. I think Monmouth had a poll that came out that showed how abortion was, important to maybe 10% of Democrats and independents in the past. Now it's more like 30% of those two subgroups that abortion is an important issue. And then we have taxes, which is largely a concern for Republicans, and then Ukraine and Russia was like the top 5 issues that were important. Looking at this by party ID, you can really see that rising prices, Republicans are on the left, independents in the middle, Democrats are on the right. And rising prices matters across party identification for women, but it really is driving Republican women. Now, before the leaked Supreme Court decision, Republicans have been supercharged. They are fired up and ready to vote. And the top issue for Republican women is rising prices. Since the Supreme Court leak has happened, we've seen a lot more activation and motivation among Democrats, among younger voters, among Black women, among Latinas. And so I think you're going to see that unfortunate case that a side effect of that is going to be increased motivation. And we already have supercharged Republicans who are ready to get out and vote. And I believe that we've seen evidence that with this leak decision and with this becoming reality, that we are going to see more increased motivation among Democratic women to compare to that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing to switch to a different study. On behalf of the AARP and in partnership with several other polling firms, we conducted a study among older voters ages 50 and over. And I'm going to start this so you can see this. How does this look? Am I on the right slide here? Good. Okay. All right. So we conducted this again earlier in the year. And what we found, again, rising costs, rising prices is really dominating among this cohort of voters who are age 50 and over. They're concerned about having enough income. They're concerned about having retirement savings. They're concerned that Social Security is going to be able to keep up with their needs. These are their biggest worries. And I can't tell you, we asked so many questions in this survey on so many different topics, and over and over and over again, it was a drumbeat of it's the economy and it's the kitchen table economics for women voters who are ages 50 and over. We have a majority who say that the economy is not working well for them. They don't like the job that elected officials are doing on any of the major issues that we talked about with them, ranging from climate change to rising prices to what's another one we asked about, Social Security. They think that they are doing bad on all issues. They give them a grade of a F or a D, a majority, overwhelming majority, and that crosses party lines as well. So it's not like Democrats are thinking, hey, we have Congress, we have the president, we think that elected leaders are doing a pretty good job on issues. No, that is not what is happening here. They are giving leaders failing grades on issues. Another thing to point out here is that they're really worried that we're divided as a country. That was the second most important problem behind rising prices for women voters ages 50 and over, unless you are a Black woman ages 50 and over, and then the concern is racism. And then another interesting finding here is that only 17% told us that they were already decided for whom they were going to vote in November 2022. I want to cycle through a couple of slides here. So here you can just see the top 4 issues. It's the rising cost of living, and then the division, as I was talking about. Government spending and COVID-19 are tied for 3rd. The same pattern in battleground states as well. When we talk about what is most important to you, thinking about the economy, rising prices drowns out everything else overwhelmingly. Then we have government spending, wages, and income. So that's the same nationwide as well as in battleground states for these older women voters. They are concerned about having saved enough for retirement and the cost of food. Those are the major things. So when we're thinking about rising prices, it's what is happening when we're all going to the grocery store and shopping here for the food that we need for our families. We asked this year, how well is the economy working for you? And then AARP had done another study in 2018, slightly different universes of people that we're talking to here. In 2022, it's the voters that we think are likely to turn out. So they need to be registered to vote and likely to show up in November. In 2018, you just needed to be registered to vote to qualify for the survey. So they're not an exact match, but look at the difference between 2018, where you had a solid majority who said the economy was working well for them personally. In 2022, in the COVID era, we have voters who are older women voters who are much more split. 52 say it's not working well for them personally, and 48% say it is working well for them personally. I'm going to skip this one. In the next 12 months, how are things going to be going for you and your family and your personal economic situation? We have 47% who think it's going to stay the same, but it already isn't going well. So that is not good news. And then we have 39% who think it's getting worse. I already kind of touched on this a little bit. Major concerns for women voters who are ages 50 and older: income keeping up with rising costs, and Social Security being there when they retire. All right, I'm going to pause this share and bring up another study. So in addition to talking to women ages 50 and older, for Wellesley College, we did a study on women ages 18 to 30 years old. So we kind of have, I don't have an in-depth study on women in the middle of the age cohorts, but I do have the youngest women, and then I do have the oldest women who are adults. So let me get this started so we can see this as well. So there's a lot of echoes when we talk up to the older women, the ages 50 and older compared to the youngest women. And what we saw here is that there's a bit more pessimism, I think, among the women who participated in the AARP survey. The younger women are optimistic about the future, and they think that things will be getting better in the next 5 years. We also saw in this study, again, ages 18 to 30, they are not necessarily having children. And we did focus groups with them as well. And they told us, it's having financial security, having a good work-life balance, being able to be a good parent is critical. And it's hard to do that right now. So for those who are maybe postponing or thinking about not having children at all, that's what's top of mind for them. They really want financial security and respect from employers. Those were the top 2 things that they said were important for workplaces to provide. So financial security, they want good wages and benefits, and they want respect for all. And this crosses age, this crosses race, this crosses if they've gone to college or not, it crosses party identification. These 2 things are critical for younger women. They are focused on an agenda from elected officials that is about freedom from sexual violence, access to affordable healthcare for all, pay equity for women and workplaces that are free from discrimination. They're also real leaders. We've really noticed over the last decade how mental health has shifted in our culture and our society. And so they are pushing for mental health. And for this young cohort, mental health and wellness are hand in hand, and you can't have wellness if you don't have good mental health and access to the resources that you need. We do see some ideological divisions. It's not like everybody agrees on everything. So you have Democratic women and independent women in this age cohort who are really activated and motivated. And again, this is before the leaked Supreme Court decision. They're really motivated by reproductive choice and access to abortion, ending racial profiling, protections for people who are transgender and also undocumented immigrants, student debt forgiveness, and universal pre-K. So there's a difference in party. Republican women are less likely than Democrats to say that this is very important here. So I tried to go through that quickly. It was a lot. All of these studies are public. I'm happy to share links so that you guys can look at this and dig into it if you're interested in it. But I just wanted to give you a quick flavor of what we're seeing and what we know about attitudes among women, and had the luxury of having this like kind of deep dive with these different cohorts as well.
Thank you so much. And I did have a question of when these surveys were conducted.
Sure, great question. Usually the most important question. So the Wellesley study was in the field in February, and then the AARP study was in the field. Where do I have my methodology here? I don't have it in this deck. It's too, let me see if they have it somewhere here. It's too stripped down. I'm sure when they were presenting, they said this, but I don't have it at my fingertips. Earlier in the year, I think February as well. And then all in together, we were in the field in March.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think this is incredibly helpful for us as we work to develop our messaging as well around the ERA and the protections that it will give, thinking about the issues that are obviously on the mind of the women that you surveyed. Does anybody? Yeah, no, it's because the ERA, I feel it kind of encompasses all of the issues that are brought forth in your survey. So making sure that we are striking the right balance is really helpful information. But I did want to open it up to our members if anyone had any questions for Cate. And I know that we're running late, and I hope everyone can stay a few minutes later, but I think both these presentations were incredibly important. Eileen?
Yeah, hi, Cate. I have a question for you. You're talking about all of the numbers are saying that the younger people are just not motivated to vote. And as a woman of a certain age, I remember the gas lines of 72, and one of the houses I bought was a 13% interest rate. And I understand that all of these things are cyclical, and I'm privileged enough that I'm not worried about where I'm going to buy my next meal. But I also wonder how, I really believe that this election is an inflection point for everything that the under 40 crowd cares about, particularly women, like you're talking about. They want autonomy, they want all of these things. And I really think we're at an inflection point. And there's those micro issues like the everyday kitchen table stuff. And then there's the larger existential issues like, will we still have a democracy post-November? How do we cut through the noise and find out how we can make these younger women understand that, yes, it hurts today, but a lot of these issues that are dominant to their voting decisions really fall under this too shall pass, while there are some things that, the call is coming from inside the house, and do you understand this is an inflection point? How do we get that messaging out, and how can you ask those questions to find out why it's not getting out? Because I think that's the big ball that's being dropped in this election.
Yeah, I think when we talk to young people, the concern is really cynicism. That's more the enemy here. The idea that, the problems are too entrenched, the interests are too powerful, and what can we do to make a difference? So I think if we are persuading younger audiences about how important it is to show up and vote and bring their values to bear in when it comes to election time, is to start with shared values with them. We all want a world where we can have respect in workplaces and earn equal pay. We want a world where people can make decisions about if the abortion care is the right decision for them. And then it's after we are on the same page with them, or we're starting with a shared value, we identify the problem. But the special interests and the wealthy have the system working great for them. It's the status quo is perfectly fine for the folks that it's worked for all along. Then we need the call to action, and we give them an example of a time that we have come together in the past to make change. And we can talk about the civil rights movement. We can talk about efforts to desegregate schools. We could talk about efforts to have a weekend. There's plenty of examples where the people have come together to demand change for the good of all. So we need to give folks an example so that we lower the temperature and they know that this is something we can do, and we overcome that cynicism. And then the last thing is a call to action. The way that we can build the world that we're dreaming of is by showing up together. There's more of us than them. When our voices combine, we can make a real change and demand change. So that's what I would say.
Okay, and that, I think that would also apply to the BIPOC community, because there's a lot of cynicism there, and like, why bother? Nothing changes.
Sure, and for good reason.
Yeah, and again, we have to
underserved, under-resourced, Black women. No one turns out more religiously, more devotedly than Black women voters, and yet are they getting the policy solutions that they are crying out for? No.
But the younger people of different racial groups are, for different reasons, all seem to be apathetic, and their needs aren't. They're not grabbing the majority that they would have if they would just coalesce. And this, to me, is the question of our time.
Yeah. Well, I hope what I said helps kind of think about.
I appreciate it. I appreciate that more than you know.
The sequencing of how we reach people to build agency and motivation instead of letting them fall into that cynicism that it's too much to overcome.